I wasn't supposed to be part of it. That's the first thing I need to say. Because even now, when I replay everything in my head, there's this stubborn part of me that insists I didn't cross a line on purpose. Like it just happened. Like a slow leak you don't notice until the floor is already soaked. His name is Tyler. He's my stepson, technically, though that word always felt a little too formal for what we actually were. I married his dad, Mark, when Tyler was already 17. Quiet, tall, a little guarded, but polite in that careful, almost rehearsed way. He had this habit of hovering at the edges of conversations, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to take up space. By the time everything started unraveling, he was 19, home from his first year of college for the summer. Taller than I remembered, broader shoulders, a little more confident, but still carrying that same awkward energy, like he hadn't quite figured out where he fit in yet. Mark worked long hours, always had. Construction management, which basically meant early mornings, late nights, and a constant low-level stress that followed him home. Our house out in the suburbs felt big and quiet most of the time. Too quiet, honestly. So it ended up being me and Tyler a lot. At first, it was harmless. Grocery runs, quick dinners, watching whatever random show popped up on Netflix. He'd sit at the far end of the couch, knees bouncing, scrolling his phone like it was a shield. I'd ask him about school, about friends, about girls. That last one always made him shut down a little. Not really my thing, he'd say, or just shrug. I figured he was shy, or inexperienced. It wasn't a big deal. Plenty of guys take their time. But there were moments, small ones, that stuck with me. Like the time we were in the kitchen, late at night, both of us half asleep and digging through the fridge. He reached past me for a bottle of water, and for a second, his hand brushed my hip. Not even intentional, probably, but he froze, completely froze, like he touched something he wasn't supposed to. Sorry, he said quickly, stepping back. It's fine, I told him, laughing it off, but his face had gone red. Not just embarrassed, something else, something more intense. And I felt it too, that brief electric awareness that made me suddenly very conscious of the space between us. I ignored it. Of course I did. That's what you do with things like that. Weeks went by. Summer settled in, hot and heavy, the kind of heat that makes everything feel slower, more exposed. Mark was traveling more for work, leaving us alone for days at a time. And Tyler started opening up. Not all at once, it was gradual. A comment here, a question there. He'd linger longer in conversations, actually meet my eyes instead of looking past me. There was this one night we stayed up way too late, sitting on the back patio with a couple beers. The air was thick, buzzing with cicadas, the sky that deep, dark blue you only get in the middle of summer. He was quieter than usual, staring out into the yard. You ever feel like everyone else got some kind of manual? He asked. I glanced at him. What do you mean? Like, how to be normal, how to talk to people, how to not screw everything up. I smiled a little. Pretty sure nobody got that manual. He shook his head. Doesn't feel that way. There was something raw in his voice, something honest. You're doing fine, Tyler, I said. You're in college, you've got friends. I don't have that, he cut in. That what? He hesitated, took a long sip of his beer. Experience, he finally said. It took me a second to understand what he meant. Oh, I said, softer now. Yeah. He let out this short, humorless laugh. 19, and I might as well be in middle school. That's not true, I said. It kind of is. We sat in silence for a moment. I could feel the weight of what he wasn't saying, the insecurity, the frustration. It was so vulnerable, and something about that made me want to fix it, to help. That's where it started, I think. Not attraction, not anything like that. Just wanting to help. You're not behind, I told him. People move at different speeds. There's nothing wrong with that. Easy for you to say. I raised an eyebrow. You think I had it all figured out at 19? He looked at me then, really looked. You seem like you do. I laughed. Trust me, I didn't. He studied me for a second, like he was trying to reconcile that with whatever version of me he had in his head. What was it like? He asked. What? Your first time. That caught me off guard. I hesitated, then shrugged. Awkward, messy, not nearly as big a deal as I thought it would be. Yeah, he said. Yeah. Honestly, most people don't know what they're doing. They're just figuring it out as they go. He nodded slowly, absorbing that. I wouldn't even know where to start, he admitted. There was something in his voice that pulled at me, a kind of quiet desperation. And I should have changed the subject. I should have laughed it off, told him to talk to his friends, to meet someone his own age, to figure it out the normal way. Instead, I stayed right there with him. It's not as complicated as you think. Feels complicated, only because you're overthinking it. He leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair.
I don't want to mess it up. You probably will, I said lightly. Everyone does. That made him smile, just a little. I'm serious, I added. It's never perfect. You just learn. He was quiet again. Then he said, almost under his breath, I wish I could practice. I felt something shift in my chest. A subtle, dangerous shift. Practice? I repeated. Yeah. Like, just know what I'm doing before it actually matters. I let out a small laugh, trying to keep it casual. That's not really how it works. I know, he said quickly. I didn't mean... It's okay, I said. But my mind was already moving in directions it shouldn't. There was a long pause, the kind that stretches just a little too far. You ever think about it? He asked suddenly. Think about what? Like, if things had been different. Different timing, different people. I frowned slightly. What do you mean? He hesitated, then shook his head. Nothing, forget it. No, say it. He looked at me again, and there was something in his expression I hadn't seen before. Not just nervousness, not just curiosity, something heavier. I just mean, you're easy to talk to, he said, and you don't judge me, and you actually listen. My throat felt dry all of a sudden. That's kind of the bare minimum, I said. Not for me. The way he said it, quiet, sincere, hit harder than it should have. Tyler, I started, but I didn't even know what I was going to say. I know it's weird, he cut in. I'm not stupid. I didn't say you were. I just think about stuff sometimes, he said. What it would be like if I wasn't so behind. There it was again, that word, behind. And without thinking, without really understanding why, I said something that changed everything. You're not behind, I said softly. You just haven't had the right situation yet. He looked at me, searching my face. What does that even mean? He asked. And I could have stopped there. I could have pulled back, redirected, shut it down. But I didn't. It means, I said slowly, choosing each word like I was walking a tightrope. Sometimes it's not about timing.
It's about feeling comfortable, safe, like you're not going to be judged. The air between us felt different now, thicker. Yeah, he said quietly. That's what I want. Our eyes held for a second too long, and that was the moment. The exact moment where everything tipped. Not an action, not a touch, just a feeling. A line suddenly visible, and both of us standing right at the edge of it. I told myself nothing had actually happened. That was the excuse I leaned on the next morning, standing in the kitchen with a cup of coffee I barely tasted, staring out at the backyard like it might give me answers. The night before kept replaying in fragments. The way his voice dropped when he talked about being behind. The way he looked at me when I said he just needed the right situation. That look stayed with me. Not confused, not embarrassed, intent. I hated that I noticed it. I hated even more that I didn't shut it down. Tyler came downstairs a little after 9. I heard his footsteps before I saw him, slower than usual, like he was debating whether to even come into the room. When he didn't meet my eyes right away. He went straight to the fridge, opened it, stood there longer than necessary. Morning, I said, trying to sound normal. Morning. His voice was tight, careful. There was a weird tension in the air, like we were both pretending something hadn't shifted when we both knew it had. I kept waiting for him to say something about the night before, or for me to casually brush it off, turn it into a joke, anything, but neither of us did. He grabbed a bottle of orange juice and leaned against the counter, still not looking directly at me. You remember what we were talking about last night? He asked finally. There it was. I felt my chest tighten. Yeah. A beat of silence. Was that weird? He asked. I could have said yes. Probably should have. It would have been the cleanest way out. Instead, I shrugged. It was just a conversation. He nodded slowly, like he was testing that answer in his head. Didn't feel like just a conversation. My grip tightened slightly on the mug. What did it feel like? He hesitated, then finally looked at me. Like you actually understood what I was saying. That shouldn't have been dangerous. That should have been a normal human moment. But the way he said it, like it mattered more than it should, made something twist in my stomach. I do understand, I said. Yeah, he said quietly. I think you do. We just stood there for a second, facing each other in this weird, suspended silence. Then he said it. I meant what I said. I swallowed. About what? Wanting to know what I'm doing, he said, before it actually matters. There was no pretending anymore.
no hiding behind vague wording. I felt a flicker of something I didn't want to name. "You'll figure it out," I said, but even to me it sounded weak. He shook his head. "That's not what I mean." I exhaled slowly. "Then what do you mean?" He stepped a little closer. Not enough to be obvious, just enough that I noticed. "I mean, I trust you," he said. That hit harder than anything else. Trust. Not attraction, not curiosity. Trust. And somehow, that made it worse. "You shouldn't," I said quickly, almost too quickly. His brows pulled together. "Why not?" "Because I'm not," I stopped myself. "Not what? Not safe? Not neutral? Not someone who should be having this conversation?" "I'm not the right person for that," I finished. "Why?" he pressed. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out right away. "Because I'm your stepmom. Because this is crossing a line. Because if Mark found out..." But none of that came out, not directly. Instead, I said, "It's just complicated." He let out a quiet breath, like he expected that answer. "Everything's complicated," he said. "That doesn't mean it's wrong." That sentence stayed hanging between us. I should have shut it down right there, drew a clear line, set something firm enough that it snapped whatever this was before it stretched any further. But I didn't, because a part of me, one I didn't want to acknowledge, understood exactly what he meant. Complicated didn't always mean wrong. And that thought alone should have scared me more than it did. The rest of the day felt off. We stayed in the same space, but everything had this undercurrent now. Every glance lingered a little longer. Every small interaction felt loaded. Even something as simple as passing each other in the hallway carried this awareness that hadn't been there before. At one point, I caught him watching me. Not in a casual way. Not like before. It wasn't innocent anymore. And the worst part, I didn't immediately look away. That night, Mark called. He was in Chicago, something about a delay on a project. His voice was tired, distracted. "How's everything there?" he asked automatically. Tyler was in the living room, just out of sight, but I could feel his presence. "Tyler doing okay?" Mark asked. "Yeah," I said. "He's been around. We've been hanging out." "That's good," he said. "He needs that." Needs that. The words echoed in my head. After we hung up, I stayed in the kitchen for a minute longer than I needed to, just standing there, phone still in my hand, staring at nothing. "You okay?" Tyler's voice came from behind me. I turned, a little too quickly. "Yeah, just tired." He stepped into the kitchen, leaning against the counter across from me. "You talked to my dad?" he asked. "Yeah." "What did he say?" "Same stuff, work, mostly." Tyler nodded, but he didn't look satisfied with that. "He trusts you," he said. I blinked. "What?" "My dad," he clarified. "He trusts you. A lot." Something about the way he said it, my stomach dropped. "Okay," I said cautiously. "He always says you're the only person who really gets things done," Tyler continued, "that he doesn't have to worry when you're around." I forced a small smile. "That's nice of him." Tyler didn't smile back. "He thinks everything's simple, I guess," he said. "What do you mean?" "Like people just stay in their roles," he said. "Everything stays where it's supposed to be." There was a quiet tension in his voice now, something sharper. "Tyler?" "I don't think it works like that," he cut in. The air felt heavier again. "No," I said carefully. "It doesn't always." He held my gaze. "So then why pretend it does?" My heart started beating faster, and I hated how obvious it felt. "Because some lines are there for a reason," I said. "Are they?" he asked. There it was again. That challenge. Not aggressive, not disrespectful, just persistent. "Yes," I said. More firmly this time. He nodded slowly, but I could tell he didn't fully agree. "Okay," he said. "But what if those lines don't make sense?" "They don't have to make sense," I said. "They just exist." "For who?" he asked. "For everyone." He let out a quiet breath, like he was holding back something else. "I don't think it's that simple," he said. "Tyler?" "I'm not trying to make it weird," he said quickly. "I just don't think everything is as black and white as people pretend it is." I looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw it clearly now. He wasn't just talking in hypotheticals. He was talking about us. And the worst part was, I didn't disagree as much as I should have. That realization hit me harder than anything else so far. because it meant the problem wasn't just him. It was me too.
I think we should take a step back, I said finally. His expression shifted slightly. Not hurt exactly, but something close. From what? He asked. I hesitated. From whatever this is. He studied me for a long moment. You don't even know what it is, he said. That's exactly the problem. Silence stretched between us again. Then he nodded once. Okay, he said, if that's what you want. There was something in the way he said it that didn't feel like agreement, more like patience. Like he wasn't convinced this was over, and that unsettled me more than anything else. Because deep down, I wasn't convinced either. Taking a step back sounded simple when I said it out loud, like it was just a matter of creating distance, resetting things, putting everything back where it belonged. But reality didn't cooperate. It wasn't like we could suddenly avoid each other. We were in the same house, moving through the same rooms, crossing paths in ways that used to feel normal and now felt charged. Even silence between us had weight. The next couple of days were careful, too careful. We both stuck to safe topics, surface-level conversations, weather, food, random TV shows, anything that didn't touch what had been sitting just beneath the surface. But that didn't mean it went away. It just changed form. It showed up in the pauses, in the way he'd glance at me and then quickly look somewhere else, like he caught himself doing something he shouldn't. In the way I became hyper-aware of everything, what I was wearing, how close I stood, how long I held eye contact. I started noticing things I hadn't before, like how he carried himself differently now, less closed off. There was a quiet confidence creeping in, mixed with that same uncertainty he'd always had. It made him unpredictable in a way that kept me slightly on edge. And then there were the moments that felt almost accidental, like brushing past each other in the hallway, shoulders barely touching, but neither of us pulling away as quickly as we used to. Or sitting on opposite ends of the couch, but somehow the space between us felt smaller. Nothing obvious, nothing you could point to and say, that's where the line got crossed, but something was definitely shifting. One night it finally cracked again. It was late, past midnight. The house was quiet except for the low hum of the AC. I couldn't sleep. My mind kept circling the same thoughts, the same what-ifs, the same uncomfortable awareness of how thin the boundary between us had become. I went downstairs to get some water, thinking the cold air might help clear my head. The lights in the living room were still on. Tyler was there, sitting on the couch, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees, phone in his hands but not really looking at it. He looked up when he heard me. Hey, he said. Hey, I replied, stopping just short of the room like I wasn't sure if I should step fully into it. Couldn't sleep? He asked. No. He nodded slightly. Same. For a second, I considered just grabbing water and going back upstairs, keeping things controlled, safe. But I didn't. I walked in and sat down in the chair across from him instead of the couch. That distance felt intentional, necessary. Neither of us spoke right away. You've been avoiding me, he said finally. I let out a small breath. I haven't been avoiding you. Yeah, you have. I shook my head. I've just been giving things space. Same thing, he said. It's not. He leaned back slightly, studying me. You think if we don't talk about it, it just goes away? I hesitated. I think it doesn't get worse. He let out a quiet, almost amused breath. You really believe that? I didn't answer, because I didn't. He set his phone down on the coffee table, his attention fully on me now. I meant what I said before, he continued, about things not being black and white. I remember, I said. And you said we should take a step back, he added. I did. Have you? He asked. That question hit harder than I expected. I crossed my arms slightly, more out of instinct than anything else. Yes. He tilted his head a little. Really? There was something in his tone, not mocking, not aggressive, just certain, like he already knew the answer. Yes, I repeated, but it didn't sound as solid this time. He held my gaze for a second, then said quietly, Then why does it still feel like this? My chest tightened. Like what? I asked, even though I knew exactly what he meant. Like you're thinking about it too, he said. I looked away for a moment, my eyes landing on nothing in particular. Tyler, I'm not trying to push you, he said quickly. I just don't think I imagined it. You didn't, I admitted, before I could stop myself. The second the words left my mouth, I felt it, that shift, that irreversible step forward. He didn't look surprised. If anything, he looked relieved. Okay, he said softly. Silence settled in again,
but it wasn't the same kind as before. It felt heavier, more honest. You said it's complicated, he continued. It is. But you didn't say it was wrong, he pointed out. I closed my eyes for a brief second, feeling the weight of that. I said there are lines, I replied. Yeah, he said. But you didn't say why they matter to you. That question sat there, uncomfortably close to something I hadn't fully faced. Why did they matter? Because of Mark. Because of what this looked like. Because of what it meant. But there was another answer too, one I didn't want to say out loud. Because if I didn't hold that line, I didn't know where it would stop. They just do, I said finally. But it sounded weaker now. He nodded slowly, like he expected that answer too. Can I ask you something? He said. I hesitated, then nodded. Okay. He leaned forward slightly again, his expression more serious now. Have you ever thought about it? He asked. My stomach dropped. Thought about what? He didn't look away. Us? Like, not like this. Just different. The room felt smaller all of a sudden. Tyler. I'm not saying we would do anything, he added quickly. I just want to know if it ever crossed your mind. It had. That was the problem. Not in a clear, intentional way. Not something I sat down and entertained. But in flashes. In moments. In those brief, dangerous seconds where the line blurred just enough for the thought to exist. And he could see it on my face. You have, he said quietly. I swallowed, my throat dry. I shouldn't have, I said. That's not what I asked. I looked at him again, really looked. And for the first time, I again tried to deflect it. Yes, I admitted. The word hung in the air between us, heavier than anything else we'd said so far. He didn't move, didn't speak right away, but something in his expression changed. Not surprise, not shock, confirmation. Okay, he said softly. Silence settled in again, but it wasn't the same kind as before. It felt heavier, more honest. You said it's complicated, he continued. It is. But you didn't say it was wrong, he pointed out. I closed my eyes for a brief second, feeling the weight of that. I said there are lines, I replied. Yeah, he said. But you didn't say why they matter to you. That question sat there, uncomfortably close to something I hadn't fully faced. Why did they matter? Because of Mark. Because of what this looked like. Because of what it meant. But there was another answer too, one I didn't want to say out loud. Because if I didn't hold that line, I didn't know where it would stop. They just do, I said finally, but it sounded weaker now. He nodded slowly, like he expected that answer too. Can I ask you something? He said. I hesitated, then nodded. Okay. He leaned forward slightly again, his expression more serious now. Have you ever thought about it? He asked. My stomach dropped. Thought about what? He didn't look away. Us? Like, not like this. Just different. The room felt smaller all of a sudden. Tyler. I'm not saying we would do anything, he added quickly. I just want to know if it ever crossed your mind. It had. That was the problem. Not in a clear, intentional way. Not something I sat down and entertained. But in flashes. In moments. In those brief, dangerous seconds where the line blurred just enough for the thought to exist. And he could see it on my face. You have, he said quietly. I swallowed, my throat dry. I shouldn't have, I said. That's not what I asked. I looked at him again, really looked. And for the first time, I didn't try to deflect it. Yes, I admitted. The word hung in the air between us, heavier than anything else we'd said so far. He didn't move, didn't speak right away. But something in his expression changed. Not surprise, not shock, confirmation. Okay, he said softly. I felt like the ground had shifted under me. This is exactly what I didn't want, I said, my voice quieter now. Why? He asked. Because once you say it out loud, it's not just a thought anymore. He leaned back slightly, his eyes still locked on mine. Maybe that's not a bad thing, he said. It is, I replied quickly. It complicates everything. It already was complicated, he said. I shook my head, running a hand through my hair. You don't understand what this could turn into. Then explain it to me, he said.
I let out a breath, trying to find words that didn't sound like excuses. It could turn into something we can't control, I said finally. And that scares you? He asked. Yes. He nodded once, like he respected the honesty. It doesn't scare me, he said. Of course it didn't. That made it worse. You're not thinking about the consequences, I said. I am, he replied. I just don't think they matter as much as you do. They matter, I said firmly. To who? He asked. There it was again. That question. And I knew the answer, even if I didn't want to say it. To everyone, I said. But even as I said it, I felt how fragile that argument had become. Because in that moment, sitting there with him in the quiet of the house,
It didn't feel like everyone. It felt like just the two of us. And that was the most dangerous part of all. I should have walked away that night. That's the version of the story I keep going back to. The one where I stand up, say something firm and final, and put real distance between us before anything else has a chance to happen. It would have been clean, clear, something I could have lived with. But I didn't move. I stayed exactly where I was, sitting across from him, letting the silence stretch instead of breaking it. And the longer it stretched, the more it felt like something was building inside it, something neither of us was willing to name first. Tyler was the one who shifted. Not dramatically, not in a way anyone else would have noticed. He just leaned back slightly, like he was settling in instead of pulling away, like he wasn't going anywhere. "You keep saying it's dangerous," he said quietly. "It is," I replied. "But you're still here." That landed harder than anything else he'd said. I didn't have a good answer for that. "Because walking away doesn't make it disappear," I said finally. "No," he agreed. "It doesn't." Another pause. It felt different now. Not uncertain, not hesitant. I knew exactly what was happening, and I was still letting it. "I don't want to hurt anyone," I said, more to myself than to him. He didn't respond right away. When he did, his voice was steady. "I'm not trying to hurt anyone either." "That's not how this works," I said. "Intent doesn't change the outcome." He watched me for a second, then asked, "So what's the outcome?" I let out a slow breath. "Everything gets messy. Things don't go back to normal." "They're not normal now," he said. That was true. There was no pretending otherwise anymore. I looked at him, trying to find something in his expression that would make this easier. Hesitation, doubt, anything I could use to pull us back from this edge. But there wasn't any. He looked certain, not reckless, not impulsive. Certain. And that scared him more than if he'd been unsure. "Tyler," I said, my voice quieter now, "you're not thinking about how this changes things between you and your dad." His jaw tightened slightly at that. "I've thought about it," he said. And I don't think he needs to know every detail of my life," he replied. "That's not the same thing," I said. "It kind of is," he pushed back. "You're acting like this automatically destroys everything." "It could," I said. "But it doesn't have to," he said. That word again. Doesn't have to. Like this was something we could control if we just handled it the right way. I shook my head slightly. "You're underestimating this. Or maybe you're overestimating it," he said. We just stared at each other for a second, both of us holding our ground in a way that felt new. Then his voice softened. "I'm not a kid," he said. "I know that," I replied. "Then stop treating me like I don't understand what I'm saying," he added. "I'm not," I said. "I'm trying to think about everything that comes with it." "So am I," he said. "I just don't think it automatically makes it wrong." There it was again. That word. Wrong. I felt my chest tighten. I didn't say it was... I stopped myself. Because I hadn't. Not clearly. And he knew that. "You keep dancing around it," he said quietly. "Either it is, or it isn't. It's not that simple. It is for me." Of course it was. Because for him, this was about experience, about curiosity, about finally not feeling behind. For me, it was everything else. History, boundaries, consequences. But underneath all of that, there was something else too. Something I hadn't wanted to admit. It didn't feel wrong in the way I expected it to. And that terrified me. "You said you trust me," I said, shifting the focus. "I do." "Then you need to trust me when I say this isn't something we should do." He didn't respond immediately. And for a second, I thought that might be it. That maybe that was enough. That maybe that would be the line that held. But then he said, very calmly, "That's not what you actually feel." My stomach dropped. "You don't know what I feel," I said. He held my gaze, completely steady. "I think I do," he said. "You don't," I repeated, but it came out weaker this time. "Then look at me and say it," he said. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. "Say that you haven't thought about it," he continued. "Say that you don't feel anything, and I'll drop it." I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Because I couldn't say it. And he knew it. That was the moment everything finally broke. Not in a loud, dramatic way. Just quietly. I looked away first. And that was enough. "I'm not trying to make this something it's not," he said, his voice softer now. "I just don't want to pretend it's nothing." "It's not nothing," I admitted. "Okay," he said. Silence again. But this time it felt like something had already been decided, even if neither of us had said it directly. I don't want this to be a mistake, he added. That word hit me differently. Mistake. Because that's what I'd been trying to convince myself this would be. But standing there, in that moment, it didn't feel like a mistake waiting to happen. It felt like a choice. A very clear one. You don't even know what it would be, I said. Then show me, he said. The words were quiet, almost careful, but they landed with weight. I felt my heart start to pound in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. This was it. The line wasn't blurry anymore. It was right there. And all it would take was one step. I looked at him again. Really looked. And for the first time, I stopped trying to justify it, or label it, or push it away. I just saw him. Not as my stepson. Not as someone I was supposed to guide or protect. Just him. And that was the most dangerous shift of all. Because once that perspective changed, everything else followed. I exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the moment settle in. This changes everything, I said quietly. I know, he replied. And there's no undoing it. I know. He didn't hesitate. Not once. And that certainty, it pulled me in more than it should have. I should have walked away. I didn't. Instead, I stood up. And that was the moment I knew there was no going back to how things were before. Not after this. Not after the choice I was about to make. Because this wasn't something that just happened anymore. This was something I was stepping into fully aware. And somehow, that made it even harder to stop. I took a step forward, and everything changed.